all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your Sunday with us. And there's so many amazing panels happening, so thank you for choosing to be here with us. We also make sure we want to thank all the volunteers, the Zinn crew, who made this happen. I think this is the 11th year, and it's all volunteer run. So thank them for their hard work and dedication. It's really important for us to have gratitude to everyone that came before us, that started movements, ancestors, those that taught us how to resist colonization and supremacy. So our panel today is We Take Care of Us, Global Resistance at the Intersections of Disability, Colonialism, and Community. So it's going to be a space for truth-telling and sharing, hopefully to encourage each of you to do more than accept crumbs like inclusion and reform. Our collective liberation requires resistance, and for us, we're going to be talking about deep care and actions that can amplify that. So our themes are going to be connecting disability justice, colonialism and supremacy, and resistance through community care. So just going to spit some facts some of you probably already know. The U.S. is a settler colony, and our current systems continue to enact violence on Black and brown bodies at home and across borders. And so until we can come together to care for the most violated and the most harmed people, we're never going to be free. 40% of people in state prisons have a disability. That's compared to 15% of the general population. So Black, Latino, and Native people are more likely to be arrested and incarcerated. So that hypercarceration is now an acceptable form of eugenics and slavery. They have not been abolished. Disabled people obviously are arrested at significantly higher rates. 2/3 of Black men with disabilities will be arrested before their 28th birthdays. In the name of peace and democracy, the U.S. has created mass disability and collective trauma across the world. I think it's important to name many of them: Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, North and South Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Palestine, Pakistan, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, Panama, Grenada, Haiti, Serbia, Kosovo, and DRC via corporate colonialism. These are direct bombs, right? And so we have violated many more peoples that I haven't named here. And we continue to witness daily mass disabling events in Gaza, paid for by our tax dollars, while at home we're defunding food, housing, and medicine. So in Gaza, over 100,000 people have already been killed, over 173,000 people injured. That's over 40,000 children, and at least 21,000 children have new disabilities because of this genocide. There are more childhood amputees in Gaza than anywhere in the world. And so we're not only funding this in the billions, we're sending our cops to Israel to be trained by the IOF to bring that brutality back to our streets. Our cities are investing in the same racist surveillance technology that's targeting Palestinians, and now at home it's targeting Black, brown, and disabled bodies. So this is a shared system of apartheid and supremacy that is continuing. And so we are today bringing up how we want to disrupt these global systems that are designed to punish and erase us. Okay, so that was heavy. I felt it. So before we start our dialogue and introduce our panelists or speakers, I wanted to just invite us to do a short grounding because we are going to be facing these heavy realities face on. So I invite you to close your eyes or just look down, just to take a moment for us to honor those that came before us, and also to discharge that urgency and numbness that supremacy culture forces on us, allowing us to slow down and feel, as difficult as feeling might be. So, want to take a moment to give gratitude to the Ramaytush Ohlone people whose ancestral homeland we're settled on, as they continue to be stewards of this land. We want to acknowledge our ancestors, teachers, community leaders, and all those that risk their lives for our futures. We are not alone. We are not just getting started. We're continuing to fight for our collective liberation in honor of those before us, for the most harmed, and for those to come. All right, thank you. So now I'm going to introduce our speakers. Latif will be joining us soon. So I'm Sheila Roy Lev. I'm a Bengali woman, born and raised in the city. I'm a family caregiver, occupational therapist, and author of Boutique Disruptors. And then at the end, we've got Leroy from Harvard to Whitney Museum to Media Engagement for Disability in Johannesburg, South Africa. Leroy Afmore Jr. has more than 20 years of activism, journalism, writing, and lecturing on race and disability. A Black disabled poet, activist, and author of 3 books, as he mentioned earlier, on Black disabled issues from poetry to children's books and graphic novels. His titles include Crip Hop Volume 1, Black Disabled Art History 101, and Black Disabled Ancestors. He's the founder of Crip Hop Nation, one of the founding members of National Black Disability Coalition, and helped start organizations like Disability Advocates of Minorities Organizations to Sins Invalid, and was an early thinker on disability justice. He's part of the award-winning song and film of Netflix's sports documentary on the Paralympics, Rising Phoenix. He's traveled internationally presenting and networking with other disabled activists and artists, and has won many awards for his advocacy. His cultural work includes Where is Hope?, a documentary on police murder of disabled people, and it's being presented today at 2:30 in room 301. And then Nida Withawiyah is a Palestinian activist, multidisciplinary artist, social worker, and graduate educator. A lifelong creative, her artistry is deep-rooted in rich heritage, resilience, and beauty of her homeland. Through her work, she captures the spirit of her people, weaving together visual, literary, and performance arts to preserve cultural identity and advocate for social justice. So welcome.
I want to add that I'm a long-time member of Poor Magazine and a part of their school, so yeah.
And they're downstairs.
Yeah, their tables downstairs, so while I'm both there, yeah. Tiny's in the house, yeah. He's in the house.
And while we wait for Latif, I've invited each of the panelists just to share some reflections and stories before we move into dialogue and exchange. So I wanted each of you to share a little bit about your work and how you experience care as resistance. Do you want to start?
Yeah, so a little bit more. I think our work is not my work, it's our work. Stories that I can go back to my childhood, but really got really active when I moved here from New York. Yeah, I saw this glossy magazine at Valentine's bookstore. I used that bookstore. And it was Poor Magazine. I was like, what is this? You know? So I tracked Tiny down and got involved with Poor Magazine in the beginning. And I also took my activism on the East Coast because I was into police brutality at the time. And Poor Magazine was also involved, and then we got involved with Arthur Skelly case, and we came up with never calling the police. As a matter of fact, we had one of the first open forums on police killing of people with disabilities back in the 90s. Because at the time, Arthur Skelly and Boyd, and there's like 3 or 4 high cases of police brutality against Black disabled men. So,
Mario Woods.
So me and One Magazine had this open forum, and this open forum. So yes, I've been in One Magazine, and also rest in peace, Patty Byrne. Me and Patty Byrne started Zinn Ballot, and that started disability justice, which is kind of interesting now that I see disability justice anywhere except the Black and Brown community, which is really really hurtful to see. I see it in academia, I see it at freaking Ford Foundation. So I'm really glad that to be part of this panel, we get it back into the community. That's where it belongs.
Yeah, just if before we get into questions, if there's anything you want to share about your work and experience with care as resistance.
I came to the United States 26 years ago from Palestine, and so I lived there during the first Intifada and experienced care as resistance in the way my matriarchs showed up for the people and resistance fighters who were on the streets by leaving food on corners, hidden by cardboard boxes, by leaving supplies, alcohol swabs, and things like that. And so from a very young age, like 6 to 8, me and my siblings would, hold hands and carry bags in corners and understand what we were doing and find notes there. And we, couldn't read them at the time, but find notes there to take them back to my parents to replenish supplies and needed things for them to continue resisting for us, right? So I experienced that care as a foundational part of who I am and how I show up in the work. And, as you were reading my bio, and I, purposely leave out like the accolades and the awards, because I feel like I've been awarded in my life by these capitalistic and colonial imperialist organizations to try to silence me, to be like, oh, here's this shiny award. Hey, let's take her to Las Vegas for 2 weeks with the +1, right? Thinking that this is going to be a way to silence me and silence what I have to say about injustices in our communities here, right? With our houseless folks, our trans siblings, our Two-Spirit siblings, our migrant families. So I see that our disabled folks who are so invisible in our communities, in every intersect of our communities, right? So our interconnectedness is so runs so deep, and once we begin to care for each other, once we begin to care for our disabled folks and our houseless folks, and protect our trans siblings and protect our migrant families, we will begin to experience a type of resistance that we experienced in Palestine for over a century now.
Thank you. I just want to add to that. A lot of, hearing you say that they throw these shiny things at us, it's distraction. And we talk about some of the most violated, most harmed people being invisible. Yes, to the media. Yes, they try to have, not to the cops, right? How are they brutalizing Black, brown, disabled bodies at the highest rates? They're not invisible. they see us, but there's a lot of distractions in place. So I want to hear more about things that have risen up in response to the systems that have, I don't even want to say they failed us, right? They were built this way, and harmed our communities. So Leroy, you shared a lot of, about the organizing that you've done, and these disability justice communities, Sins and ballot organizations that the people have built, right? That's something that has risen up. And I'll pass it to you, Nida, and then give you some time to think about it. Leroy, what has risen up in response? So, I know your community is across borders, so whoever you want to include in community, any examples you want to share of what has risen up. I mean, what you did as a child, your aunties you witnessed is something, anything you want to add to things happening locally?
Systems have not failed us. You're right. Systems were built for our failure, right? And so, and you just said, I was speaking specifically for my mom, like experiences with my mom, but you said my aunties, and I'm so sorry. I'm like flashbacking, right? My oldest aunt has two daughters. Both are wheelchair users. And one time she was taking her older daughter to the hospital, and the Israeli occupation would not let the wheelchair through. So my aunt carried my very overweight cousin on her back through this gated checkpoint so that she could take her to the hospital. So yes, my aunties also did show up for the resistance and our survival as well. Thank you for reminding me of that. But for systems like that have failed us, right? In our part of the world, the systems are like these international bodies, right? These humanitarian bodies that were literally put in place to save the world. And they were created by colonial and imperialistic white European colonizers, right? And these systems have been in place from the beginning. We saw it here in the genocide of the native indigenous folks on Turtle Island, right? It's the same blueprint in Palestine that they've been using. And so in response to this and the century-long occupation and ethnic cleansing of my people, right, we begin to understand that the only way forward through this is the Palestinian practice of sumud, right? Of being steadfast in our resilience, steadfast in our belief that native indigenous power remains and continues to grow strong, right? So we've been, I wrote right here, we've been taught that, but we haven't been taught that. We live that, right? We experience it and then exude it in the way we show up, right? We've been fighting these colonizers for a century, over a century. And just like the native indigenous folks on Turtle Island have for many centuries, they're still here, present and fighting, right? And so we learn from this survival. And I'm actually another space where I'm going to be, I went up a little bit. Sorry. And so with our sumud and our interconnectedness of all of our struggles, right? We need to be able to build mutual aid networks that work for the people. And we saw this happen when the Black Panthers tried to do it, right? And they were such a big danger to the government because they saw they were building clinics, they were building schools, they were building kitchens, they were building community spaces where we can survive without the support of the government, right? And they saw how dangerous this was, and they shut it down. And so we must continue learning from our ancestors and seeing what was the threat to the governments, right? And continuing with that resistance. Because we cannot just continue to resist because we're fighting them. We have to resist because we love each other, right? And we want to build each other up, and we want each other to survive and thrive. And so that's where resistance lays for us is in our survival and
And I'm glad you brought the non-profit industrial complex into it, because they are no different than governments and other institutions. And so, with that initial question in mind, I want to throw to you as well, Leroy. You know, we had talked about this prior as we were planning this event. What does care beyond the state mean in practice, right? And the Black Panther Party is the perfect example of a threat. They were labeled terrorists. They were surveilled through Council Pro. We saw that again in Stop Cop City. We see that, you know, those of us that live in big cities, we see that happening when they criminalize feeding hungry people. You see priests getting arrested for feeding hungry people, and we see every school and hospital has been destroyed. Just like Nada said, they're threatened, right? The risk of us liberating ourselves deems them powerless. And so I'll start with you, Leroy. You know, if you want to add to things that have risen up in response, but what does care beyond the state?
Yeah, I want to say that the system is, I have to say it's us, because like the party, you know, people with disabilities brought together independent living services. You know, the government didn't think about that. You know, people with disabilities say, okay, we need to care for ourselves, and that became a system. You know, so what I'm saying care is that we've been doing it. You know, we just didn't take it back from the system. Like, no, this is ours. This is our idea, and we need to really, you know, bring it back to the community. Four Magazine has been doing this since day one, talking about care work and talking about, you know, taking care of your neighbor. You know, when my landlord was an asshole, and you know, when the elevator broke down constantly, I don't know, Poor Magazine came in and helped out. You know, you talk about, you know, really knowing your neighbor. You know, and that's. I know that sounds basic, but that's what needs to happen. Disability justice. You know, when Patty Byrne and Jim Minkus and myself and Stacey Milburn say, okay, white disabled, you know, elites, we're going to start this disability justice. And when you talk about care work, you talk about, you know, starting a meeting, like what needs do you need to be involved with the meeting? We started every meeting like that. And I know it's hard for men to do that, you know. But we have to get over our maleness or our ego and just really, you know, be truthful to ourselves, because everybody has needs. Everybody has needs to be capable to evolve in a meeting, but just be open about that. And also, we need to really realize that movements start locally. You know, we don't need to wait for a big or foundation movement. You know, once again, Poor Magazine is poor, and what they're doing excellent work in East Oakland. with no funding, with no nothing. And that's it. Yeah. That's what we have to really think about, especially now with, the orange cracker in the White House. So I always say that people need to come back to the community and do the work that we've always been doing, outside of nonprofits, So yeah.
Thank you. I love just hearing, get to know your neighbor. I mean, how many of us do that, right? We've really taken on this hyper independence that this country promotes. And I'm just going to pause. Come on in, y'all. There's seats. This is a community. Yes. We can.
And I want to say quickly is that we have to change our mindset, especially when it comes to disability, because our mindset is always on a deficit model, because these nonprofits, have grants, so they have to fill out okay, I have to do it for like every couple of years for the SSI. They got can't work, I can't do it, I can't do it, can't. But we have to get out of that deficit model, especially when it comes to disability. There's some radical. That's one of my goals in my PhD is bringing Black radical thinking into disability. Because there's a lot of radical Black disabled history that we don't know that they can teach us. It's more than just care and taking care of, but there's also Black radical organizing that really kicked ass. South Africa during apartheid, a lot of Black disabled people got together and helped push, to get Nelson Mandela out. That's not on TV, that's not anywhere, but those are the kind of stories that we need to really dig up and really be part of disability justice.
And Nelson Mandela was another person who the U.S. labeled a terrorist, who got a Peace Prize. So, what about for you? What does care beyond the state mean in practice? Maybe what have you seen or what you want us to do?
Care beyond the state. I think I began talking a little bit about how the Black Panther Party showed up, and what a big threat that was to the government, because it exemplified what community can do together, right, and what mutual aid and support can do. And as a Palestinian, I living in Palestine until 26 years ago, I experienced care beyond governmental organizations because we didn't have that, right? We weren't allowed specialists or trips to the hospital. And so we as a people had to create these systems for ourselves. I remember breaking my ankle once, and they brought the community healer to the house to help massage my bones into place. And that was regular practice, right? We had regular Indigenous practices happening, and we built and grew that together. And so we knew who was helping for those areas. We knew who could help feed people. We knew who could help hide people when they need to be hidden and transported. And so this community care, it's reminding me of in Atlanta, there's the Black Yellow Pages, right? It's all the dentists are Black dentists, all the mechanics are Black mechanics, and for us, we knew everywhere where we needed to go and how that map looked for us in all of our communities, and to speak about the history of Black disabled folks in South Africa, and the significance of histories that have purposely been hidden, right? Because they want to hide the power of that community. and they know how powerful that community is. And so they are purposely hidden. And I'm so glad that they're being resurfaced now so that we can learn from these communities, because we've always known, our ancestors have always guided us to do what we know needs to be done. And these governmental, they just want to, they are threatened by it. And so we just need to tap into that, into our ancestral power to guide us.
I love that. I'm gonna continue on that line, that thread. Centuries of colonization, and we're still here, right? Around the world, we're still here, so there's a lot to learn. So I would love to learn more. I know, Leora, you've traveled the world, you've connected with activists across continents. So I would love to for you to share what you've learned from global movements, and especially the ones that I don't know if I would say the West tries to ignore them, but they try to keep us from them, right? So we want to speak to some of the movements that you've witnessed or learned about in other parts of the world.
Yeah, it's interesting because back in when I graduated my undergrad, I wanted to go to London because London had a lot of disabled movement, and I've always been like, where's my black disabled people going to London? When I got there, it's like, you just missed it because they were starved out. A lot of, just be honest, white disability organizations said, you can't split the movement. The same thing happened in Toronto. You can't split the movement. And those histories are gone. People don't talk about those histories. There's a kick-ass black disabled woman in Brazil that's taking a different route. They say, okay, if the kid white elitist disability movement, we're going to concentrate only on our community, and they've been doing that ever since. My PhD is for one of my comp exams. I'm pushing back on intersectionality. I say no, it's about decolonizing. And really looking at friends and all, saying that this recognition trap is a trap because we don't need to be recognized by colonizer, and knowing that the whole framework is messed up, so we need to decolonize everything, especially in black disability communities, because they never had a chance to really decolonize their mind by slave masters that had a capitalist way of thinking that disability was a sin. So we need to decolonize that mindset. And I think Dr. Joy DeGruy talked about healing and how can we heal when our minds are still colonized. So we need to colonize our mind, and that's what my goal, hopefully coming back my PhD is to open up the Queer Pop Institute in Oakland, where Black and Brown and other, disabled people and their families can not only do art and music and stuff, because that's what Queer Pop does, but also can learn about the Black radical, disabled radical history, and also decolonize our mind around disability and see, the whole radical side around disability. And, I learned from Poor Magazine. I learned from my ancestors. So it's really time to really push back on these theories that they come from academia, because I've been pushing back on them constantly inside the brilliant piece, bringing poverty scholarship inside of my competence, and they don't like it. My advisors don't like it. You're too radical, but it's not for the academia, it's for the community.
So that, if you wanted to add anything to global movements that you've witnessed that you want to share, I also kind of, what Leroy's throwing down, I wanted to ask about movements that have been co-opted and watered down, right? Like the first Pride was a riot, and now it's a corporate parade. BLM is not just the black squares on social media and hashtags. And much like you said with the disability justice movements, feminism, and queer movements as well, we see in the mainstream, they are for white bodies, they include everyone else. We see, especially what's happening in Palestine, that these movements are being weaponized against people in the global south, right? We had this conversation, Israel is talking about it being the most queer-friendly place in the Middle East while they're wiping out every queer person in Gaza. And so, do you want to speak to, what do we do? How do we resist this watered down and co-optation of these movements that people lost their lives for?
Yeah, thank you so much for everything you said. We must learn from, and I'll get to that because I have a lot to say about the co-opting and hardening of our movements. But we must continue to study and learn from our ancestors and how and what they try to do to survive these colonial monsters, right? These colonizers of our land and our body, of our resources, of our minds, right? We must learn what they tried so that we can strengthen that and get better with our fight. And something that has taught me, and I know has nourished me, and I know other Palestinians who reside on Turtle Island, is the strength and the resilience of the Native Indigenous folks here. I still, till this day, work besides my family, my Indigenous family here, to help repatriate the land back to Indigenous hands. And hundreds of years later, it's teaching me that one day we will begin to repatriate our own lands and our own homelands away from colonizers. So they have taught me so much. And also I want to bring up another revolution that is hidden a lot of the times and actually demonized a lot, the Cuban Revolution, right? And they have been a target of America's imperialistic disgust for so long. They've been besieged, and so I just want to talk about how much I've learned from that movement. I remember growing up thinking Che Guevara was my uncle because my dad had a picture of him in his office. And I remember the picture of Che had a picture of Leila Khaled in it. Do you guys know that picture? Yeah. And from a young age, I understood how connected we were, right? The levels of mirrors. And they try to make us think it's not interconnected by putting another funny mirror there, right? But it's all the same thing. And another way they try to make us think it's not connected or it's not serious and bring the joyfulness out of it is by co-opting our movements, right? I use the word conditioned as I'm a graduate professor, and I use the word conditioned in my class, and the student complained about me because he's not conditioned. And they literally pulled me in to have a conversation with me because these making someone uncomfortable to think that we have been conditioned for generations upon generations upon generations to look away when we see houseless folks, to look away when our migrant families are being kidnapped, to look away when disabled folks aren't getting equitable care or resource or accessibility into buildings. We have been conditioned. And we must work towards dismantling that condition in every place we are in, right? My dentist office has 2 bathrooms, male and female. And I've gone into both and they're identical. So I wanted to talk to my dentist, why is one male and one female? Why? What is the point there? And they changed it. Now they just say bathroom and bathroom. And is that a big thing? No. No one knows my dentist, and it's not going to change the world. And yet we all have a responsibility to move in this world, creating resolution to what these colonizers have done to us, and creating equitable resources and accessibilities for all of our siblings.
I want to say it's up to us to tell the truth. When Black Lives Matter started, me and Poor Magazine was like, oh no. Because we saw their track record. They first talked about police training. Me and Poor Magazine said, fuck police training. We knew that shit was going to happen. So, but because of their, power of their, we just got ran over. There are a lot of Black activists on the ground from Ferguson to Oakland got ran over because Black Lives Matter did what Jesse Jackson did back in the day. I was there when my father was an activist like me, doing anti-police. Here comes Jesse Jackson coming off an airplane. All of a sudden, everybody's listening to Jesse Jackson. I was like, what the fuck? So we saw the same thing with Black Lives Matter. And I was like, immediately like, what's going on? It's the same cycle. And, they matter of fact, Zinn and Ballot, me and Paper, reached out to them in the beginning to do a disability justice training, and they say, oh no, we don't need that. It's like 70% of all police shootings are people with disabilities, and you're saying no to disability justice. So I think it's very up to us to really call them out. I don't care how much money they get from a Ford Foundation. Fuck that. You need to call them out from the beginning. I can't. Every time I look at Ben Jones, it's like,
man, I was thinking, Ben.
I used to protest with you. Are you serious, man? So, it's really up to us to call it out and keep on calling it out and keep on calling out with partnerships like other organizations that are getting run over by these big corporate movements. So anyway. I mean, you didn't have the nerve to come to Berkeley and do a Berkeley event and talk about this. I was like, what? But anyway.
Yeah, and again, thank you both for all those examples. They count on us to be silent. They count on us to be apathetic. And I see it. We not just decolonize. We need to deprogram ourselves, right? It is conditioning. It's brainwashing.
Yes.
It is collective trauma. It's and so speaking up, standing up, not being distracted by the shiny things. Kamala Harris, when they put people out there that look like you, identity politics. They put people out there that look like you, so that now no one can say anything, and you're all celebrating your oppression. All right. Was there anything you wanted to add, Nada? I know you said that you did want to speak as well to the co-optation and watered down before I switch up a little bit.
We're calling it like the Ed Hardy effect, right? I don't know if you guys know what Ed Hardy is. He was this really big designer where like a shirt of his would be like $1,000, and then
a bedazzled shirt,
a bedazzled shirt, whatever, right? And then like Target gave him a contract, and then Walmart gave him a contract, and then he started selling his lighters in gas stations, and now you can get an Ed Hardy shirt for like $3, right? And it just got watered down. And that's what they do. It's funny, right? But that's what they do with our movements. They take them and water them down. They give us a fucking parade. They give us a fucking holiday, right? They make us think it's this nice and fun thing now, right? Something we celebrate. Oh my God, so fun. But yet we're forgetting what goes behind it, or what the foundation of this holiday is. Like Veterans Day. We literally celebrate a holiday. We celebrate people who went and murdered other people in other countries, innocent civilians. Thanksgiving, they literally conditioned us to celebrate a holiday that genocided the native indigenous folks here. So we must be diligent, and we must be aware of what's happening and how they use our minds against us, to numb us, to dumb us, and to keep us in a state of control. And like I said, we must trust our ancestors. We must trust our bodies. When they tell you you're in danger, this is not true. Trust yourself. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so beautiful examples of what's happening around the globe.
I'm sorry. And like Leroy said, speak up. Yeah. If you see something being co-opted, if you see something being appropriated, if you see this, speak up. Mm-hmm. You cannot be an ally and not speak up when something is happening in front of you.
It's hard when you get that grant money. It sets you off.
Love it. Okay, so lots of beautiful examples of what's happening around the globe currently. Those before us had initiated centuries, sometimes thousands of years ago. You talked about traditional healing. I would like to learn more about things like art, storytelling, cultural memory, and how we can use those as tools in resisting supremacy. So whoever wants to start us off.
It's interesting you talk about art. I keep on coming back with Liberatory magazine because back in the 90s we did the Poets project, and the Poor magazine is like, everything started with a story. Hopefully this was a story. Yeah. I remember in grade school, I used to hate poetry until my father took me to New York, and I saw the last poet for the first time. I was like, oh, snap! Because for poets in school, you talk, you learn about white David and poetry. I was like, oh, snap! So that changed my whole thing. Hip hop is nothing but hip hop. It's stories, and we do this throughout Africa. We and I know it's no I, but really, Hip Hop did this African U.S. tour in, I think, 2016, when we brought 5 artists with disabilities all through Africa here to Berkeley. They stayed in my Section 8 apartment, and we did a little tour around the Bay Area. Did that on SSI dollars. Check this out. So now I'm at UCLA. I was like, okay, I want to do, a quick tour, at UCLA. My advisor's like, oh, that's too much money. We can't do that. I was like, I did it on SSI dollars. In 6 apartment, you can't do. So anyway, just to say that storytelling and poetry and it comes from the community. June Jordan, poetry for the people.
Yeah.
Poets. It's not no academic thing. It comes from the community. It organizes community. Storytelling. That goes back to Native Americans. Yeah.
Leroy, tell them about Black Disabled Ancestors, one of your books.
Yeah. One of my books is not here. Is Black Disabled Ancestors. It's really a fiction story. I put six couples together of Black Disabled Ancestors. One story is Jim Crow and Porgy from Porgy and Bess, and I put them together and they come back downtown Oakland and take over Oakland and talk about that. But very people, thank you, Dee. Very little people know about the real Jim Crow, the person. The real Jim Crow had a disability. Very. When I read the new Jim Crow book that came out, Michelle, I forget her last name. Yeah, I was so pissed off. I was like, there's no connection to disability. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
He's talking about prison, he's not talking about disability. Well, once again, disability is not there. So anyway, I use storytelling to bring back Black disabled ancestors to today, so you can take that downstairs at Four Magazines table.
I feel like there's no stories. They forget to mention disabled folks in these stories. They were always there, right? Always have been a part of our communities from the beginning of time. And again, I feel like the
Moses had a disability.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
person who invented the Jim Crow dance of America's slavery era, that started out as a disability that eventually transformed into a dance of some kind.
Thank you. Welcome. So our storytelling has been a deep embedded part of the Palestinian Foundation in resisting the colonization of our land and our bodies. And so we must continue this memory to be passed on. And what this is for us is a type of weapon of existence, right? We use our embroidery to tell stories, to tell ancestry. We have graffiti all over our neighborhoods honoring our martyrs and honoring our freedom fighters. We have storytelling. We actually respect our storytellers, Hekawatis. They are people who continue the oral history of our people. They pass on historical knowledge because colonizers, as we know, do not want our stories told, right? They do not want the power of our people to be known. And that's why they disappear the most powerful of us, right? Our culture carries our memories when we create these artistic avenues because all of our, as you see right now in Ressa, our museums, our libraries, our archives are all now dust and don't exist anymore. So our stories are even more important. I know there's a disability justice Palestinian warrior who uses comedy as a weapon of existence, right? And it creates joy where there's only pain, and what that does is it breeds a different type of resistance, right? And all of this, even what we're doing here, learning from one another, this is creating joy and resistance and community, right? This and all of these art forms is what turns our pain and our suffering into power, right? Empowering our communities to strive for more, and it reminds us, and it reminds everyone else that we were always, we are now, and we will always be, right? So, welcome.
Welcome. So I'll give a brief introduction for Dr. Lateef McLeod, who's building his career as a writer and scholar. He recently was a community research associate at Oregon Health and Science University in their Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. He has a BA in English from UC Berkeley, MFA in creative writing from Mills College, doctorate from the Anthropology and Social Change program at California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. He published his first poetry book, A Declaration, A Body of Love, in 2010, chronicling his life as a Black man with a disability. And since has published Whispers of Crip Love, Shouts of Crip Revolution, and co-authored Studies in Brotherly Love. He's working on a novel tentatively entitled The Third Eye is Crying, and has done theater performances with Sins Invalid in their Artists in Residence performance, Residence Alien. Check out his podcast, Black Disabled Black Talk. And would you like to share a little bit about your work? I know it's tough out here to find parking, so if you need a moment to get settled, we'll share what you're comfortable.
Ableism. We must confront ableism. Hello, I am Dr. Lateef McLeod, he and him pronouns. It is a pleasure to be here today and speak in front of you all. For my introductory speech today, I am going to focus on there needs to be a greater knowledge of disability justice and the adverse effects of ableism in all communities, especially people of color. Ableism is the type of oppression that most directly affects people with disabilities because it devalues people in society that do not adhere to the able-bodied norm. An example of ableism is the notion that people with disabilities are not the most productive employees in the workforce. This belief causes employers to avoid hiring people with disabilities and causes the disability community to have a high unemployment rate. This is just one of ableism's ill effects. We must confront ableism in society by having a better understanding of disability justice as a society. My colleague on the panel, Leroy Moore, with the likes of the late Patty Byrne and others, devised the 10 principles of disability justice to begin to pave a way for a better emancipatory vision for people with disabilities in society. The 10 principles are as follows: intersectionality, leadership of the most impacted, an anti-capitalist politic, cross-movement solidarity, recognizing wholeness, sustainability, commitment to cross-disability solidarity, interdependence, collective access, and collective liberation. All these principles should be incorporated into all disability-led movements and all other social justice movements. However, these principles are one in a myriad of tools that we need as disabled people to get our collective liberation. One of the other tools for liberation that we need to utilize is education. Especially for communities of color, there should be educational campaigns that are directed to those communities that educate on both ableism and disability justice. My colleague, Leroy Moore, has done some of that work with the coining of the term Black ableism and documenting how ableism operates in the Black community. I already told Leroy that after he graduates and has his PhD, we are going to write a book on Black ableism because we need that type of scholarship available to the public. We need literature and other media that educates our people on disability politics, and it is one of my career goals to create this literature and media for our people. And I apologize for being late. I went to the wrong campus, but I am glad I am here. And I apologize for being late. I went to the wrong campus, but I am glad I am here.
Thank you. I feel like we need to apologize for being a society where transportation is inaccessible to all people and impossible. And we talk about decolonization, we talk about resisting. Unfortunately, in this case, there's a schedule, so we want to just respect the next speaker. So we are going to wrap up, but I want to make sure Dr. McLeod, Nida, Leroy has 3 more events back to back here. So so if you came late, obviously there's just never enough time. But you can catch Leroy's events, his documentaries. Yeah, and his documentary screening. Nida, I believe you'll be here around for a little bit. Hopefully, you as well, Dr. McLeod. So if you have questions, we started a little late, so we didn't have time. But this is forever work, anyways, right? Even if we started on time, what can we get to in 90 minutes, right? So please do stay in touch with everybody. Stick around for the rest of the events that are coming up. But as we wrap up, I did want to just in closing ask each of you to give a brief. We got 2 minutes left, so like a really quick, just final word. We started with acknowledging those that came before us, so the past. We talked about what's happening in the present. What do you want us to carry forward? So we'll just kind of go this way. I'll start with you, Leroy. What do you want us to? And brief. I know, no pressure.
Well, I just got more more practice what magazine has taught me, that hopefulness and, all stuff comes from the community. We can do it, by really being honest with ourselves. If people have privilege in one area, contact other people that don't have that privilege. You have a PhD, and so that. And for myself, I want to say I'll be coming back to the Bay. I'll be looking for assistance and help to build the Crip Hop Institute, because we want a Crip Hop Institute in East Oakland to really educate the Black and Brown community on disability, and also to music and to do art. So I'll be coming back and looking for a building and looking for places to hold this. I think it's gonna be one of the first of its kind to be really concentrated in the Black and Brown communities. So Black and Brown community can be, coming up to disability justice, because we're still in the medical model of disability, the religious model of disability. So we need to really bring our communities up to disability justice and what he says, so we can have a community, really behind us, in front of us, talking the same politics, revolutionary politics that we're talking.
Thank you. Yeah. I really appreciate that, and I feel like we need to think about that on also here on Turtle Island and globally, right? As a Palestinian, having lived in occupation and apartheid, as someone with invisible disability and with family with visible disability, I understand that our liberation is all connected to each other, right? For there to be disability justice worldwide, including here on Turtle Island, there must be a free Palestine. One doesn't come without the other, right? Disability justice would be incomplete anywhere in the world if Palestine were not free. So we must continue to build a collective care system, right? And not to reform the systems that we have, because again, those systems were not built for our survival. They were built for our failure, right? And we have to navigate them. But we must dismantle these systems and begin to build these collective systems where we are caring for one another, right? Just Leroy's note on knowing your neighbors. In 2009, the house next door was on fire. And I ran out, and they were like, is everyone out? And I was the only one on that block to know that Marilyn was in a wheelchair. To tell the fire department that there's someone inside who's a wheelchair user. And hadn't I not been there, there was not another neighbor that knew that. And so the importance of starting local and on the most minute level of just knowing your neighbors. Because if you are kidnapped, your neighbors will be the first to know and the first to call your families, right? And so even on that level, we must know our neighbors. And then we build these collective care from there. But it starts with just knowing our neighbors, right? That mindset change must, the colonial acid, the decolonizing of our mindsets must begin with ourselves.
I want to say very quickly, and then anybody has a trust fund, Tiny is in the back of the room.
Right, right. Pay your Shumi tax. give to your houseless folks and the people who are helping them. These are our responsibilities, right? My privilege got me to where I am and how much money I make or what have you. My privilege did that. And so I have a responsibility not to look at it like, oh, I worked so hard to have what I have, right? I have the privilege now to support my community in ways that I can support them from what I've gathered from my own privilege. So we must do that for each other.
Latif.
We need more education about disability politics and disability justice, like Leroy said, and make disability more visible and accepted and just seen as another characteristic in the human experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, we've heard people say to say people's names and bring up things, and so, you know, disability justice, accessibility, all these things aren't afterthoughts. Every space you're in, anything you're creating, it should be at the beginning, right? So
And it doesn't belong to the Ford Foundation. It belongs to the community.
yeah. So, you know, thank you for being here in this space in community with us, and again, you know, please stay in touch and keep up the building and movement and action. You know, none of us talked about reflection. We are well beyond that stage. So, thank you.
Oh.